A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
An opportunity again today talking about Christians and money. It's a subject that we're all intensely interested in, even more intensely interested in if we know things are not going quite so well. And we say, I'm a Christian believer. I want to be able to understand God and finances. So we're talking specifically today about how many Christians struggle financially and how to fix it. Finance expert Alex Cook is back with us before the Wealth with Purpose Stewardship Summits get underway. First one coming up on the 21st of October in Sydney. You might want to make a note of some of these dates as I give them, ones that are near you. 21st of October in Sydney, 23rd of October in Melbourne, on the 29th of October in Brisbane, and on the 6th of November in Perth. Now, Alex is, he's designed the summits. And to help align your financial life with biblical principles, with practical strategies for navigating topics like investing and retirement and financial challenges within marriage. Well, finance expert Alex Cook is back with us today, former stockbroker, been a successful financial planner. He's the founder of Wealth with Purpose. His ministry is to help equip Christians like you and I to honour God with our finances by teaching sound financial skills. And shortly, we will open our talkback line. You might have your own question to fire at Alex. Maybe it's the one you've always thought, I'd need to ask this question, but who do I ask? Well, no holds barred today. You'll be able to ask Alex Cook. Shortly, we'll open our talkback lines so you can ask those questions. You'll also be able to send us a text on 0447 488 316. Alex Cook, I might say, a special welcome back to 2020.
Thanks, Neil. Great to be back for another month.
You know,
October
Alex,
already.
It is. The time has flown by this year. It is a bit scary. And then, you know what? You're getting ready for these great summits that are coming up. 21st, the first one happening in Sydney. How, just generally speaking, we'll talk some more about these, but how are things looking?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's always fun trying to plan these things. 4 cities, speakers in each different venue, so that's the challenge. But also making people aware, of course, is the great challenge. So I'm really appreciative to you guys for helping us spread the word. You know, our passion is teaching Christians about stewardship and the profound impact that it has not only on their lives, but ultimately on the kingdom. You know, our heart at the end of the day is really helping Christians to live financially healthily so that they can then use their money to advance God's kingdom. You know, when we look around the world today, it's getting darker, and we need to get the gospel out there as much as we can, and that ultimately means resourcing the front lines. And Vision is a ministry that is on the front lines in terms of that kind of thing. And so, yeah, our passion is teaching stewardship to help fund the front lines of getting the gospel out there.
Okay, well, when we do these segments, we often will start with, in a nutshell, appreciation for and a little bit of analysis of what's going on economically, both here in Australia and around the world. So if we're doing a little bit of an economic update here, because we're going to talk about Christians and money, good to know where we fit in the context of all of this. What are you seeing economically here in Australia and around the world?
Yeah, well, look, if you look at Australia on face value, you'd say it's just plodding along slowly but surely. Inflation has come down. GDP growth has ticked up a little bit. Unemployment is still very low at 4.2%. You could hardly complain about that. Obviously, inflation is the big one that's been the worry over the last couple of years, and that seems to have settled down, although starting to tick up a little bit. Housing market is really accelerated again during September, probably helped by rate cut. We've had 3 rate cuts this year. And there's also big government changes, which we'll talk about shortly, that the Albanese government has put into place, which kicked off on Wednesday, and that's accelerating the housing market. Shares this year have been really volatile. You know, we had Trump's Liberation Day back in April, which took markets spiralling down. But overall, the Australian stock market's up 7% this year. So on face value, it doesn't look too bad. But I think it's more the structural issues in our economy that has people down. I mean, housing is obviously a great cause for concern for many people, whether you've got a mortgage or whether you're renting. It's extraordinarily expensive. But interestingly, Australians feel bad about the future at the moment. So even though the economy is, as I say, it's ticking along, it's not in particular distress or anything like that, most people feel bad, though. That's what the consumer confidence figures are saying. So, so I think it's, in one sense, a mixed picture. Certainly we're not shooting the lights out and growing quickly or anything like that, but, we're ticking along okay. So not too bad.
Sometimes we talk about the international issues that are going on, wars and international economics. Any thoughts here as to the developments that we're seeing in our news headlines daily, what sort of pressure that has on our own finances here nationally and into our own personal finances?
Yeah, look, I'll be honest, I'm deeply concerned about what's going on in Europe with Ukraine. That all seems to me to be escalating. If you look at defence spending, all the European countries are dramatically increasing their defence spending. They all seem to be positioning themselves to go into Ukraine and to help out. What's concerning is Trump seems to have changed his tune. People might remember he partly got elected on the fact that he wanted to end the war, and I think Americans are very sick of the wars. They've been in endless wars for however long, and I think Americans are tired of that, and he promised to not do that. But what seems to have happened in the last month, Trump seems to have changed his tune. It seems to me that, he came out the other day saying that Ukraine could take back territory from Russia and get Russia out of there, and that he would support Ukraine firing long-range missiles into Russia. Now, I find that extremely concerning, given that over 1 million Ukrainians are dead, 8 million have fled. It's hard to believe Ukraine could win without Europe going into, Europe or American troops going into Ukraine. And then, of course, if that happens, you're talking about a major war, potentially world war. And, of course, then you've got all the Middle Eastern scuffles as well. So it's very serious, and it's hard to know with the gold price. If you look what's going on with the gold price, which we can talk about, gold is skyrocketing, and you'd have to ask, is it related to that? Is it related to all this geopolitical uncertainty? But it seems to me that Europe is bankrupt. If you look at the French, I don't know how many presidents France has had in the last 2 years. I think it's 4 or 5. Under Macron. Or I should say prime ministers, not presidents. Macron's been there the whole time, but prime ministers. And then, of course, the UK is a very weak economy, as is Germany, which was formerly the powerhouse, but their energy costs are killing them and killing off their manufacturing. So when that happens, politicians tend to look at an external enemy to blame, and Russia is that enemy to blame. So it doesn't look, I'll be honest, it doesn't look positive where any of that's heading. I'm not sure we're heading to peace, put it that way. I'd like to think we were.
Hey, you mentioned changes that came into effect here on Wednesday. Focus back home and perhaps a focus on some young people and the housing market and Albanese's 5% deposit scheme. How's all that look?
Well, it's the demand so far seems to be enormous. So the housing market really started to creep up through September. And as I say, I suspect that's predominantly in relation to the interest rate cuts this year. So I think there's now a bit of a FOMO, fear of missing out effect coming in. And from what I understand in listening to mortgage brokers and real estate agents, the demand for first home buyers is skyrocketing because, as you say, under Albanese's new policy, the 5% deposit scheme, a young person can take out a 95% loan to value ratio home loan, i.e. just a 5% deposit. And ordinarily in the past, you would have had to have taken out lender's mortgage insurance in order to be able to do that. But essentially the government is backing it. And so young people can get in. But I think it's one of the I mean, housing's been bumped up by politicians for the last 20 years, but I think this is one of the worst and one of the most dangerous. You've got one of the most overinflated housing markets on earth. This is going to bring forward demand. Young people buying a house on a 5% deposit may sound attractive on face value, but it means even in the slightest downturn, they could have negative equity in their property. So if they lose their job, they're extremely vulnerable. But not only that, taxpayers are now on the hook for it as well if it goes wrong. And so I think it's one of the more silly policies that I've seen a government do. But it shows, and I think, to be honest, even if it was the opposition, they're also still very keen to keep house prices propped up. They all talk affordability, but their policies suggest the exact opposite. So, housing is just going to get more and more unaffordable, unfortunately. Very frustrating, I think.
How do you feel about the way Aussies are thinking about the future financially? And we'll get into Christians and our issues around money, those sorts of things. But how do you think Australians are feeling about the future?
Yeah, look, so the thing we track with that is what's called consumer confidence indexes. And it's interesting. Most people are very pessimistic about their own situation, and it's statistically in line with what it was like during the COVID lockdowns. That's how pessimistic people are. It's interesting, though, in the sense that at a broader economic level, most people think the overall economy is okay, not good, but okay. But at a personal level, they think their own situation will be worse off in 12 months. That's how most people are feeling. And that, as I say, when you look at the graphs of consumer confidence, it's in line with what was going on during the COVID lockdown. So people are, unfortunately, very pessimistic. So,
is there a spiritual side to all of this? We like to connect finance with our biblical view of the world. Christians who will say, I'm relying on God for the good things around my finances and helping me through the challenges. Is there a spiritual side to all of these things that are concerning Australians?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know about concerning broader Australians, but certainly amongst Christians, I think it's very spiritual what's going on. And, the Bible uses concepts like reaping and sowing, and I think we're now really starting to reap the consequences of a society that's been drifting away from God for a very long time. It's not new. It's been happening for decades. And as we do that, it's very hard to assume that prosperity will continue. Australia and America and UK, all of these Christian nations were enormously prosperous throughout their history. But as you turn away from God, you lose that prosperity. And I think that's what we're starting to see. So what we desperately need is people use the word revival, but we need a society that goes back to its Judeo-Christian values. And look, I think there is hope of that. I mean, if we're looking at what's going on, we had obviously that terrible assassination of Charlie Kirk in America. And my prayer is that out of something like that is that young people wake up and realise that life is very fragile and that we need to turn back to God and focus on the bigger, more important issues. And if that happens and we turn back to God as a nation, there is hope. And I hope we're getting similar sentiment like that in Australia. Certainly in America, there seems to be. There is always hope. And not only that, irrespective of the direction, us Christians have a job to do, and that is to fulfill the Great Commission and get on with it. But as I say, it's very difficult to assume that Australia will be a prosperous nation going forward if it continues. You only have to look at the laws that go through our parliament to see that they're anti-Christ in nature, most of them. And if that continues, our prosperity will go with it. That's just, an inevitable consequence of it.
Life, culture and current events from a biblical perspective. 2020 with Neil Johnson on Vision.
Just ahead of the Wealth with Purpose Stewardship Summits that are getting underway, 21st of October in Sydney, on the 23rd in Melbourne, on the 29th in Brisbane, and on the 6th of November in Perth, wealthwithpurpose.com to get some details about those summits that are coming up. Hey, 1-800-316-316, we're talking about Christians and why so many of us struggle with money and how to fix it. Alex, let's get underway in this segment. Why do so many Christians struggle with money, do you think?
Look, I think there's a few key reasons, but I mean, I guess probably one of the more obvious ones is we're just not taught about it. You know, we're not taught about it at school. We're not often taught about it from our families, and we're not taught about it much in churches. In fact, in churches, it's more around giving and generosity than what I would call broader stewardship per se. So there's a knowledge gap that many of us are missing. Then, of course, I think many Christians feel a bit of a tension, and that tension is because money isn't talked about much in church. There's this issue where money is almost seen as a secular thing, and apart from giving and living a generous life, which most of us know we need to do, they almost see money as something that's a bit dirty and wealth accumulation. Not sure if I should be doing that. So there's a bit of a secular, sacred tension that they've got going on in their minds. But then they've got the culture, and there's kind of this cultural tsunami coming at them, telling them that you've got to upgrade, you've got to have a better car, house, particular schools for your kids, and really live beyond your means. And so there's a mixture of confusion along with social pressure that many of us feel in this kind of environment that we find ourselves in. So I think there's a few key factors there that make us struggle. That's the reality.
It's very easy, isn't it, to get caught into this idea that money is secular, even the money is evil. And when you say money is good, you don't want people to be confused by that, thinking, oh, okay, I thought money was evil, but actually, Alex Cook, you're saying money is good, and as a Christian, I need to have a special attention to it. There's been a little bit of confusion, isn't there, on the way we sometimes think about money?
Absolutely. And look, you have to look at what Jesus said. Jesus said the love of money is the problem. So it's really an issue of who are you serving, who are you worshipping? Are we worshipping the mighty dollar, or are we worshipping God? That's the issue.
Hey, Alex, let's take a call from a listener. Anne is waiting patiently in Labrador. Hi, Anne. Welcome along.
Thanks, Alex, for being on as well. But I just want to help a young Christians especially. First of all, number one, you need to tithe. You need to put about 10% away every time to tithe. Number two, you need to also give, if you can, to Christian organisations to help them in their work. Number three, don't buy anything unless you've got the money to buy something. And even if you can't do that right now, just put it away for that to buy, and also put away, if you can, for a rainy day, for something that might crop up. These things I think you need to kind of follow as a young Christian, because you don't need the latest car, you don't need the newest gadget or anything like that. And if you put away, in time, you will be able to buy the things that you need. And also, I don't like credit cards. Bank cards. They are a trap. To say, if you're in business, maybe you have to have them something, but make sure you pay that off completely. And I think these are the things that you need to kind of follow.
And wonderful insights here, and from experience comes a lot of wisdom. Sounds like you've got a lot of it there. A quick response here from you, Alex Cook. Good things Anne is saying.
Absolutely. Look, I think I need to hire Anne to come and work at Wealth with Purpose. She'd be a fantastic advocate. The first thing she talked about, tithing and giving, is very simply put God first in your life. God should be first in our finances, should be first with our budgets. And so 100% give to God first is a critical one, and very sensible things there. And these, I think, are good guardrails for your finances. Don't buy things if you don't need it. Make sure you have a rainy day fund. Don't use credit cards. They're just addictive. So all fabulous advice. And Anne, give me a call. We'll get it.
Before we get into some more dimensions here, Alex, let's take another call. Another Anne on the line, this time from Warrnambool in Victoria. Hello, Anne. Thanks for waiting patiently.
Oh, no worries at all. I just want to comment on the feedback about why Christians, struggle so much about finances. Look, I used to be involved in the Christian churches here in Warrnambool under a ministry called CAPS Ministry, which stands for Christians Against Poverty Services. And they can be contacted on 1300 227 000. And what they can do, if you're in any large or any sort of financial debt you can't get out of, they can create a budget with you, and they can also talk to the people who you owe money to create a small payback, repayment of your debt. And they're very good. It's a free access for it, and the local churches where you are should run a CAPS Ministry course, which is free, which teaches you how to create a budget, how to cut out, cut back, to make ends meet, and cheaper options of doing things.
And Anne, have you been a counsellor and helped some people go through their budgets and get things sorted?
Beg your pardon?
Have you been one of those counsellors working with CAPS?
Yes.
Yep.
I was CAPS Ministry coach here in Warrnambool for a few years through the local churches. And the church used to run CAPS Ministry, a course where everyone is given a book, and it's a series where you watch a DVD and it shows you how to cut back and cut out of your budget and to create a new budget.
It really gets practical and where the rubber hits the roads when it happens in your own living room. And Alex Cook, I know you've got a close association with Christians Against Poverty. What are your thoughts for what Anne is sharing here?
I love it. Well, firstly, CAP is a wonderful ministry. And, one thing, just picking up on what Anne is saying, is if you're listening to this and you are in financial distress, you're really struggling, you're under pressure, you've got debt, particularly credit card debt or anything like that, or consumer debt, give CAP a call. They're fantastic people. They would love to help you. My message to you is don't walk alone. Don't think, a lot of people when it comes to money feel guilt or shame, embarrassment, all that kind of thing. Don't feel like that. Get help. There are lots of wonderful people who would love to help you and, get back on track and build firm foundations for the future. So, now, give CAP a call.
Anne, you mentioned the phone number there. Do you have that in front of you? What was that number once again?
1300 227 000.
Okay, it's 1-800 227 1300. 1300?
1300 227 000.
Okay, for listeners to connect with CAP, you can do that. Anne, thank you so much for your call. Really appreciate you. 1-800 316 316 to join in our conversation today. Hey, let's take another call. Henry is in Redcliffe in Queensland. Hey, Henry, welcome along.
Hello, Neil. How you going?
Doing very well, thank you, Henry.
Yeah, I just had this thought pondering in my mind about, in Psalm 33:12, God says, if we make him our God, that he would bless us, and all this climate change, if our nation would turn to God, we would probably solve our money problems. That's what I'm just asking what your visitor would have to say about that.
Fabulous insight, Henry, from Psalm 33, verse 12. We think differently about finances when God is not in the picture. Things change when we bring God in here. Alex, what are your thoughts for Henry?
Oh, look, I think he's right. In fact, Psalm 33, I'd encourage everyone to look that one up, but the one I'll give just in response to that is Deuteronomy 8:18, where it says, remember the Lord, for it is he who gives you the ability to gain or create wealth. And I think what's happened in Australia is that we've forgotten God. We haven't remembered him. And if we go back to remembering him and putting him first in our lives as a culture, then I think Henry's right. We will then see the nation recover and prosper. And God wants that for our nation, but we've got to get on our knees and also get out there and share the gospel.
Wonderful stuff. Henry, anything more to add?
Yeah, what your the man that's just spoke, it's all true. I mean, the answer's there in the Bible. We got to do what the Bible says, and the government wouldn't waste their money on all this climate change stuff. Windmills and whatever. Yeah.
Henry, thank you so much for some great insight today. 1800 316 316. You can join in our conversation. When we talk about the sorts of stewardship that you're talking about, Alex, and you've got your stewardship summits coming up. First one's in Sydney on the 21st of this month. When we talk about stewardship, sometimes we think that's just something individual we do as personal finances in our family. But in some ways, we hope that our local church will have a dimension in all of this. With your stewardship summits coming up, is it there, with leaders and churches? And, how does all this stuff filter through to people who are sitting in church and maybe they're not even listening to 2020, but they're just turning up at church occasionally on Sunday? Their finance understanding is very secularised. Churches need to be able to present a biblical view of finance, don't they?
100%. So a big part of the Stewardship Summit is actually helping church leaders to teach and preach about money, but giving that holistic stewardship message. So rather than it being purely about giving per se, which obviously a lot of pastors do each year, but it's taking it further and giving people a biblical worldview about their money. And really what we want to address is issue around how do you disciple people with their money. And so we want to help church leaders to be able to feel confident, to be able to disciple their members in this really important area. Because when they help people to become good stewards, it has such a massive flow-on effect. One is it'll flow-on effect to the life of the individual and their family. It'll save marriages. It'll help bless churches so they can do more ministry. So stewardship is very powerful both at the individual level but also at the church and community level. Because the biblical principles work, but we need to apply it holistically to our finances rather than just in one particular area. So that's certainly our passion, to help church leaders be able to do that.
Hey, Trent in Nanango in Queensland sent through a text. He says, over-taxation is the key to the poverty problem. Any thoughts around taxation? Because, over-taxation, under-taxation, you could argue all sorts of dimensions here. How do you interpret what Trent might be saying in Nanango?
I was going to say, I was trying to work out, is he trying to suggest that we tax more and redistribute, which I wouldn't support? Or are we talking about lowering it in order to create a more prosperous society?
I think he's drawing a wedge there. The left side of politics, which might say we'll tax more and redistribute. The right side of politics might say we'll tax less and leave that as responsibility for people to, earn and invest. Anyway, but so far as not getting caught up in all of the dimensions politically with that sort of statement, how do you interpret that?
Look, I think what we want is public policy and taxation that enables human flourishing, to be able to allow people to be able to get ahead and also take personal responsibility. I think the problem with where we've come as a society, people forget the age pension came in 1905. So these sort of things have been growing for a very long time. And as a society, I think what we've created is a dependence culture. And that's not what we need. We need a God-dependent culture, not a government-dependent culture. And so when we get back to being dependent on God rather than dependent on government, we'll end up with lower taxes, more freedom, and people taking responsibility and working hard and providing for their families as God intended. But of course, it's more complicated than that because there's family breakdown and all sorts of complications. So of course, there is an important place for taxation, but certainly Australia is one of the most overtaxed places on planet Earth, and it just keeps rising year after year, and that is not going to make us more prosperous. You can't tax and distribute your way to prosperity.
Okay. Hey, let's come back to Christians and our money, the way we think about money, the way we use our money. There might be a whole lot of mistakes we're making, but if you're going to boil this down to the biggest money mistakes that you see Christians making, what is it comes to mind for you, Alex Cook?
Look, I'd say it's just a failure to plan. It's interesting, I've been a financial advisor for 25 years now, I think it is. And the most common age that someone comes to see me is somewhere between 55 and 60. And the problem with that, of course, is it means people are leaving their planning to too late. Now, some of them, to be fair, had done a bit of planning of their own. But my view is the moment you start working, you should start beginning to make plans for your finances. Because often when I ask people questions like, do you know how much you spend each year, or do you know how much you need on to retire, you often get a very blank stare from probably 90% of people. So in other words, most people don't have a budget. They haven't properly planned. And if they do some of these simple things, they'll be able to really get themselves set up well for the future. So whether you're single or married, you can have a very simple money management plan to help you get ahead. And that comes across a few different areas: a plan around how you're going to spend your money, a plan around how you're going to give your money, a plan about how much debt you're going to go into, a plan how you're going to distribute your assets in your estate. There's a whole range of different things, but just keep it simple and start with a basic money management plan and set goals for the future, because that'll greatly help you. Because as they say, failure, people don't, what does they say, Neil? They don't plan to fail, they fail to plan.
Fail to plan, you plan to fail, is the way that saying goes. Hey, a little clarification. Trent, who was talking about taxation a little earlier, sent a clarifying text. He says, I meant we need more money back in our pockets. We're taxed on wages, fuel, groceries, on and on. I agree it's needed, but not to this extent. Hey, thanks so much for that clarification, Trent.
100% Trent.
Another little clarification too, the phone number we gave for Christians Against Poverty. Somebody's called in. The number provided, they say, is incorrect. So if you wrote down that earlier number, try this one if that first one doesn't work, 1300 303 929, Christians Against Poverty. Hey, come back to our attitude as Christian believers around money. What do you say to that person, Alex, who is just at this moment, right now, they've tuned in, we're talking about money, and they are overwhelmed by all sorts of difficulties in their finances right now? Where should they start to bring some level of turnaround?
It's a great question. The answer is simply start small. Don't overwhelm yourself. Just start with little baby steps. That could be something as just being aware of where your money's going first and foremost. So, I often say to people, get a notepad and write down how you spend your money for a month, or look at your bank statements or credit card statements. Just start by seeing where is your money actually going. So that way you're creating awareness on how your finances are going, and then you can work out, well, am I wasting some? Am I spending some in too little in some areas and too much in others? But start small and keep it simple. I think people often get overwhelmed by money, but if you just stick to the basics, you can do very well without great complication.
Hey, come back to what one of our callers mentioned a little earlier. When she says, yes, you need to be generous with your money. Sometimes it seems to be counterintuitive if we've got some money problems, that generosity somehow or other is put on hold. How does generosity fit into the Christian's attitudes with a biblical foundation here around money?
Look, I think it needs to be core to who we are as believers. I mean, one of the things that, Christian leaders will preach and teach about is the need for us to grow and become more Christ-like. And Christ is the ultimate act of generosity by his death on the cross for our sins. And so when we think of God's generosity towards us, our response should be generous living and having that eternal focus with our money. And the thing about generosity, we talked right at the start about one of the reasons why people struggle is, they can fall in love with money. And generosity is a great way of breaking that power that money has over us. Money is very seductive. If we step out in faith and start to give, that's when we can see amazing things happen, amazing God's provision. But also it's trusting God by doing that, by stepping out in faith and actually giving. And of course, it has a powerful flow-on effect in blessing others and blessing our local church and blessing various ministries by that generous life. But as I say, it's a great way to break the power that money can have over us, and so, being generous should be core to who we are as Christians. Doesn't necessarily come naturally to most of us, but it's something we need to grow in as we mature.
Hey, Alex, not everyone is struggling financially, but those who are really feeling the pain of the financial struggle, whether it's your inflated mortgage levels or you're paying a huge amount of money on rent, and so often living paycheck to paycheck, the old saying, one pay packet to the next. If you're sort of on this treadmill cycle, it's coming in, but it's going out, and it seems to be going out faster than it's coming in. What do you do? Why do you think this happens so often?
Yeah, well, look, I think the estimates are that more than 50% of the adult population do live paycheck to paycheck. So it's people are not alone in this area, and I think the reasons why it happens comes back to some of the things we talked about earlier, like lack of planning and so forth, but also a lack of boundaries that we don't put around our finances that we should. So, like for example, a really simple one is living beneath your means. People often use that cliche, live within your means. But ultimately, to get ahead financially, you need to live beneath your means. Now, I do want to acknowledge, though, that many listeners will be feeling the pinch. Australia is getting more and more expensive. The cost of living is a genuine issue, rents, etc. But the key to getting ahead is creating margin in your life by living beneath your means. And then with that margin, is what you do with that margin, or surplus if you like, is going to have a huge long-term impact on your finances. So with that margin we build up, we can use that money to save for our future and also to give and live generously too. So, but it starts with living beneath your means. And the simple formula, Neil, that I often use with people is what I call the 80-10-10 rule. The first 10% I call giving to God. Second 10% is more for long-term things like long-term savings and goals. And then try and live on 80% of your net income. Cruel or legalistic in any way, it's just meant to be a good, simple formula that people can process and say, I'll give that a go with my budget.
And so often, not everybody is detailed around what they might be putting down in a detailed budget plan, but those sorts of rules of thumb, the 80-10-10, just a beautiful wisdom there, Alex Cook, and coming back to that level of generosity and applying a biblical Christian view of money, or God's divine view of money, to our own personal finances. Hey, we were talking about the Stewardship Summit, the Wealth with Purpose Stewardship Summits. They're coming up 21st of October in Sydney, 23rd of October Melbourne, 29th in Brisbane, 6th of November in Perth. Just quickly on that, just for those who might be coming in on that and hearing about these summits, they're in capital cities. A lot of people have got some access to getting to them. What's the value in being a part of that, becoming a delegate? Maybe you're, got a leadership role in church life. What's it all about? And, how do you actually register for those summits?
Yeah, so to register, very straightforward. Just go to wealthwithpurpose.com and then on the homepage you'll see a link to the Stewardship Summit. So that's very easy, wealthwithpurpose.com. But really, with the Stewardship Summit, what we're really trying to do here is to be able to equip anyone who's involved in church life to be able to teach and promote stewardship, to be able to disciple others, to be able to create a generous culture within our church. Because, if we can be generous in our church and spread that out into our communities, we can make a massive difference, I think, for the gospel in this nation. And really, Christians, I'd love it if Christians were known nationally for our generosity. I mean, if you think about the many wonderful charities and hospitals and schools that have been started, they've been started by Christians. And so we need to get back to that very generous living, and then we can be the light, the light on the hill in our society. And so the summit's really ultimately about promoting those principles, those values, but with a very much a can-do, practical approach based on biblical principles to help churches and their leadership and to be able to help people thrive in this area.
Well, Alex Cook, one of the trusted voices, trusted financial insights on Vision, and Vision is a sponsor of the stewardship summits that are coming up. My encouragement for listeners, wealthwithpurpose.com to register your place to be a part of those summits, and no doubt you'll hear some more about those in the lead-up coming up, the first one coming on the 21st of October in Sydney. Alex Cook, wonderful to get your insights as always. All the best with the summits that are coming up. Thanks so much for sharing your thoughts and your heart with us once again today on 2020.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.